As Congress prepares to cut federal benefits, we have thousands of people, to include Republicans, pushing back. These cuts would hurt all federal retirements, but some workers would be impacted more than others. All this is being done to fund larger tax cuts. How will it impact you? Let's get into it. There are several changes to retirement benefits being proposed. None of them are good. We have the consistent across the board 4.4% contribution to the federal pension. This really only impacts people that came into the government before 2013. Everybody else, we've all been paying the 4.4%. Then we have the high 5 instead of the high 3. The high 5 year of salary, when it comes to computing your pension, that would lower everyone's annuity payment for the most part. But the most concerning part of all of this is the elimination of the FERS annuity supplement. The FERS supplement is a payment that bridges the gap from when a federal employee retires to when they're eligible to collect Social Security. So there are federal workers that are retiring in their 50s. If you look at some law enforcement officers, they have a mandatory retirement age of 57. So that leaves a 5-year gap from 57 to 62. But the way that this proposal is written, there are some job positions that would be exempt. This includes law enforcement officers, firefighters, air traffic controllers, and Customs and Border Protection officers. Those jobs, those positions would be protected if they stay until 57, if they stay until mandatory retirement age. If they wanted to retire a few years earlier, let's say 54, 55, they would not be exempt. They would lose out on the supplement. And it's just not positions like law enforcement officer or firefighter. Any federal employee, let's say they do 30 years, they come into the federal government as a civil service employee in their early 20s and they knock out 30 years. They're in their 50s now. So they're going to lose out on their annuity supplement. And many people would look at this situation and they'll say, so what? Just wait like everybody else. Everyone else is collecting at 62. What's the big deal in that? Well, that's because you probably do not understand what makes up a federal pension. What makes up FERS, the Federal Employee Retirement System? It's 3 pillars. 1 is the FERS basic annuity, 2 is Social Security, and 3 is the Thrift Savings Plan, TSP. So it's part of the retirement. It is part of FERS. If you're missing one of the pillars, it doesn't meet the intent of the retirement system. And it's not like a government handout. It's a partial early payment of Social Security benefits. Now, Republicans argue that what's being done, the changes here, it's bringing the federal government, their benefit structure, more in parity, more online of what's happening in the private sector. Even though federal government jobs represent less than 2% of all jobs being done in the United States, they want to make it as equal as possible. And a lot of people, they agree with this. A lot of Americans that are currently making minimum wage or just above minimum wage, people earning $15 to $18 an hour, they look at a federal government salary and they think it's too high. They look at the protections and stability and security of a federal job and they think it's unwarranted. They do not experience that when they go punch in a time card and they work 8 hours a day. They don't have that same benefit. So they don't think anyone else should have it. Everyone should be working in that oppressed, low-pay situation. This is what I typically refer to as shared suffering. Some people call it crabs in a bucket. I call it shared suffering. I'm suffering. I'm not doing well in my life. I'm not earning that much of an income. Hey, you, what do you think you're doing over there? You think you're entitled to a higher salary? How dare you? Come over here, suffer with me. Now, moving on from that, there are some federal government groups that are deeply unhappy with this, as you can imagine. They say that these cuts break promises made to workers who dedicated decades to public service. Imagine you worked 30 years, 3 decades of your life in the federal government, and right before you drop your retirement paperwork, right before you sign the retirement papers, Congress changes the rules. It's like, as one manager put it, changing the terms of a mortgage the day before closing. It also has a lot of people worried when it comes to accepting the voluntary early retirement, the VERA option that a lot of agencies have been offering their employees. Because the way that this bill is worded, as soon as they vote and approve and sign it, it becomes effective. It's not like it's effective starting January 1st, 2026. It's not like that. It's effective when it gets signed. Now, for the individual federal employees that have already retired and they're receiving the supplement, they're going to continue to receive the supplement. Let's go back to the federal law enforcement officers, DEA, CIA, FBI. Congress is saying, we have an exemption for you. Don't worry about it. But groups like the FBI Agents Association and the Federal Law Enforcement Officer Association, they're calling it an illusion. The problem with this is most officers in those three-letter agencies I mentioned, the law enforcement agencies, they're not doing this till the age of 57. It is a dangerous career. It is a difficult and rigorous career. The divorce rate, look at the divorce rate. It's higher than the general public. Most people at a certain point in time, they want to settle down somewhat, maybe have a family. It is hard to have a family, just like the military. You do 20, 30 years in the military, it is incredibly difficult to have a family. According to a letter from the FBI Agents Association, if this bill passes as is, retirement becomes untenable for most federal law enforcement personnel. This would mean many federal law enforcement officers would have to do the full 30 years, even if they wanted to only do 20 or 25, it wouldn't make sense to retire unless you did the 30. And this goes further, impacts potential recruiting efforts. You're trying to get more people to join the organization, more people to become special agents. How are they going to feel about the DEA? How are they going to feel about the FBI, knowing their potential retirement just took a hit? Maybe they're not as eager to sign up. And here's another thing to consider. A lot of people in the federal government, they're working what seems to be a law enforcement officer position. You and me would look at it and say, yeah, that's a law enforcement officer. But for federal retirement purposes, it's not considered one. This includes jobs like VA police officers, DOD police, Federal Protection Service officers, Immigration Service officers, and most correctional officers, among many others. So individuals that work in those jobs, even though they're enforcing the law, they do not benefit from a higher pension. They do not benefit from the exemption that we're talking about here. Now, since we're talking about law enforcement, let's stick with the FBI. There's some news coming out of the FBI. They're relocating their headquarters, the J. Edgar Hoover building. The new director, Kash Patel, is also taking 1,500 of his employees, people that work for the FBI, and he's spreading them out all across the country because the majority of the FBI is in the DC area, and he's saying that's not where all the crimes are happening. The crimes are happening everywhere. We need to distribute the workforce. Now, what that means more money. A new headquarter building, paying for relocation of over 1,000 workers, that means a lot more money. And the FBI has been looking for a new headquarters for over a decade. In 2023, GSA picked Greenbelt, Maryland, but that plan got nixed when President Trump took office. That new building that he wants the building to stay in DC. He doesn't want to go to Maryland. So where is this money coming from? Because as we're talking about spending money on moving people around, we're looking at cutting federal benefits to the tune of $50 billion. Now, the main support for all these actions, they're coming from Republicans, like the National Taxpayer Union, which is a nonprofit organization for limited government. They argue the federal benefits are way too generous, especially compared to the private sector. They're pointing at the national deficit. They're saying we don't have it in our budget. We got to tighten the belt. But $50 billion is a lot smaller. It's like a drop compared to the $4.5 trillion tax cut plan. And not all Republicans are on the same page. You got Mike Turner from Ohio. He voted against this proposal. Why? Why do you think? His district has a large Air Force base. He knows the ramifications. If this goes through, a lot of his constituents are going to be upset. This Republican said, I believe that making changes to pension retirement benefits in the middle of someone's employment is wrong. Employee benefits are not a gift. They are earned. Other Republicans are uneasy about this bill as well, and their constituents are making their voices heard. And using that phrase, earned benefits, when you're talking about federal employment, you don't usually hear those words coming out of Republicans' mouth. So it's very interesting. Now, all of this is looking to be signed in July. So this matters a lot for people that are thinking about retiring right now. Do I retire in the month of May or June? After July, it could be a different system. You might not get that supplement. There still is some time for a lot of the wording to change in this bill. There's a lot of eyes on this one. Now, speaking about different bills, there is another bill that's focused more on the Department of Defense, but this one, ironically, is about hiring people into DoD jobs. That's right, hiring more people in DoD. Right in the middle of a hiring freeze. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's really interesting. So if you want to check that one out, check this video out next. Stay updated by signing up to the free newsletter down below. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one.